I've got quite a lot of content to cover, and the first part of it is going to be a quick look back at some of the happier things that we got accomplished this last year. Max pointed out the bleak economic environment in which we've been working, but our association has managed to accomplish a lot. So the quick look back, the most impressive thing is everything I'm going to cover here in the next couple of minutes was under the leadership of this guy, who at one time thought that it was sexy to pose with a brick with an antenna on it. So, some quick highlights. The Market Links vendor for our MLS system. We signed a new multi-year agreement that was executed in April of 2011. Kudos to Ginger Campbell in particular for her leadership on the MLS committee. This locks in pricing for a period of 40 months. That sounds like kind of an oddball number, but the reason is our contracts have been expiring at a time of year where we were just prior to learning what our membership numbers were going to look like for the forthcoming year. So we're now going to be on a timetable where we will know our membership number for the year at the time that we're up for renewal. Those membership numbers, of course, drive our pricing, and so that in and of itself is an accomplishment to get it on a better timetable. We're going to have access in Innovia coming up to Imprev Marketing Center. This is going to be a fee-for-service item, but it will fully integrate into Innovia. So you're able to, if you want, avail yourself of flyers, postcards, online photo tours. The new contract is going to include within it the hours needed on the part of the programmers at Innovia to fully develop and implement the new residential rental class in the MLS. So there won't be any additional charge for the contract pricing for that. Prospect Pro, that used to be an add-on pricing option. It is no longer. That's what drives the listing cart feature and the prospecting features that we use within Innovia. And if you haven't noticed, those have had some enhancements in the last few months and continue to undergo some additional improvements. So keep your eye on that, because one of the things that has made us especially happy with this vendor is ongoing improvement, not just a rush to improve when we're on the cusp of a new contract. Wireless Innovia. As more of us are using smartphone devices, Wireless Innovia is the scaled-down interface for accessing the MLS. That is no longer an add-on charge, and it's going to be revamped to give us enhanced functionality going forward. Member Director upgrade. This is sort of a backroom operational item, so it's not going to mean much to us, but it's going to be something that used to be an add-on fee that's now included. It's going to streamline bookkeeping operations, making life easier for our staff, and it's going to get our member records and financials off of locally hosted computer hardware and have a cloud backup. So in other words, all of this stuff is going to be backed up online. We're going to have desktop credit card processing. This is going to be an e-commerce enabled feature made available to us through NAR. This is something that should result in reduced credit card processing fees. We've already been able to accept credit cards for the last several years. This should lower our fees. It's also going to have us prepped and ready should we deploy a new website that is e-commerce enabled so that our members can place transactions via credit card on the website. Roster, that's going to offer improved functionality for the staff as well as some new features for members. That's something that will be forthcoming in the next few months. Surveys and elections. We've never had the ability to survey our membership electronically, and now we will, and that's something that's included in this forthcoming contract. We also are going to have online voting capabilities, so should we change our bylaws in the future to facilitate online elections, we're going to have the infrastructure in place to be able to do that. So outside of Innovia itself, some other MLS items of interest this year that you may or may not know about. We've added an open house feed to Realtor.com, to the IDX, and to the Realtor Property Resource, the RPR website. We can now report non-MLS buyer side only sales to the MLS, which would be, for example, if we're representing a buyer client in a purchase of a for sale by owner property, we now have the ability to make sure that that sale gets captured in the MLS. It's good because it reports ours and our firm's sales volume, but it also means that the multiple listing service will be able to capture a larger share of what's actually happening in the marketplace. It also means that appraisers and realtors are going to have a larger pool of comparables to be able to use. Days on market was a slightly contentious issue in front of the MLS committee this year. So here's how that's going to shake out. We're going to have a new cumulative days on market field. And the cumulative days on market field is going to total up the days on market for every instance of a given property's listing, unless those listings were separated by either a period off the market in excess of 60 days or a closed sale. So in other words, something that jumps on and off the market, whether it's relisted with the same agent or a different agent, is going to have the counter continue to run cumulatively in the cumulative days on market counter. A related item is that we're going to be keying all of these to the parcel identification number. So many of you have noticed it sort of fouls up the ability to do the one-click listing history. If the last time a property was listed, it was listed as 605 South Chicago Avenue. It expires and gets relisted the next day as 605 Chicago. So by keying these to the parcel identification number, we're going to ensure that we have the ability to have what should be foolproof listing history at one click, which will facilitate the tabulation of the cumulative days on market. We will be retaining the existing days on market field. So if you know that and you love it, it's going to be right where you're used to seeing it. We're just adding a new field that will give us additional information. Address validation. Underwriters from lenders are increasingly having us, after we've already got the parties signed onto a contract, they're increasingly coming back to us to have us circulate the contract all over again just to add the abbreviation for street or for drive, because the underwriter in some other city wants to make sure that the address exactly matches what's on file with the U.S. Postal Service. So, Inovia is going to be adding in the next few months an address validation feature. When we enter new listings, that's going to be checked against the U.S. Postal Service's database, and it'll prompt us to make sure that we get the address entered accurately, completely, and in a uniform fashion, so that when somebody goes to write an offer on our listing, they'll be able to refer to the complete street address and avoid the step of having the contract get passed around again. Super key access for affiliate members who are licensed and bonded inspectors. That's another pretty big deal that got through the MLS committee this year. So that includes termite inspectors and home inspectors, among others. Travel highlights. So I've got to say, giving kudos to Max, one of the best things about having served behind Max, who has done this before, so this isn't his first rodeo running the chairs, but he also is our FPC, our government liaison person in Washington, is in DC every year. So probably my biggest highlight of the year with respect to my dealings with Max has been that when we checked into the Omni Showroom in Washington, D.C., Max has been there so many times, he literally had the floor plan memorized. So this is a story of how positive persistence pays off, because Max wore down the front desk staff's will to live to the point that they gave us these ridiculous multi-room suites for the same bargain basement conference rate. We each got one of these. So this is an advertisement for why you may want to consider running for CCAR leadership. I was, however, on the travel front disappointed that Max did not show up at 6 o'clock in the morning for the scheduled fun run event. We had 7,000 realtors in Washington, D.C., and this was the entire turnout. One of those, that lady thought she was showing up for yoga, so she was lost, and that was our group leader. So we had exactly 2 runners, and I was very sorry that Max was not among them. Let me take a quick moment to introduce the 2011-2012 committee and working group chairs. First, Association Operations Involvement Group. That's headed by the president, so that's me. Affiliate Fund Chair is going to be Pam Wilkin. Building and Maintenance Chair is going to be Julie Roth. And the Technology Working Group Chair is Mark Waldoff, who, by the way, stepped in to assume the chairmanship when the previous chair had left. So he's back for a second go-round. Other chair appointments, Government Affairs Involvement Group, Max. That is something that Max had been chair of in years past before he was an executive officer this time around, so we're happy to have him returning to that role. Grievance Committee, Georgine Hembrow. Member Services, Debbie Hensley. Professional Development, Patty Rodson. And Professional Standards, Sally Eisfeld. So thank you all for serving this coming year. I also have a couple of other people to thank. Because of the fact that serving in leadership at CCAR increases my responsibilities here and at the state and national level, there are huge demands on my time. So my team members are owed a lot of thanks because they have been great about picking up all sorts of stuff that I have to delegate because of the demands on my time. The other big thing, the other group of people I want to thank would be my other co-owners, Russ, Nick, and Tom Roth, because they have increased responsibilities and have been very supportive while I have served. And kudos to Russ Taylor, who's also been on the board of directors as well. I also want to thank Bill Craig. Bill Craig is the managing broker at my firm, but he's also a past president. And so in addition to usually keeping our office under control, Bill has done a great job being somebody I can talk to because he's been through the chairs at CCAR as well. And most importantly, I want to thank my family, because a lot of the time responsibilities that go with this are taking me away from this rough-looking group. So, and my wife Angel is here today, so thank you, Jel, and to the kids for sacrificing me for this. Although sometimes she just pushes me out the door. No, go, no problem. So I want to take a moment to look at what lies ahead. As Max alluded to, you may have noticed we have a few challenges in our industry. We have the license transition. We have a slow economy. We have a brutally slow housing market. That's resulting in declining membership for our association. That's resulting in declining revenue for our association. That declining revenue means that anything that's an elective expenditure at our association, we're putting on hold until at least February when we have some idea of how many people we have left. I know, it's a very pretty picture. So, I've spent some time trying to think in terms of, as I prepare to have my year of leadership here, what sorts of broad themes would come to mind that would sort of encapsulate and ideally inspire. And so that was one possibility. This also is kind of how I felt a lot of times in the real estate market. And then really you can't go wrong with this historical analogy. A couple of other nuggets of inspiration for you. These next two slides come from a great website called despair.com, which basically parody the inspirational posters you see around your workplace all the time. So for those in the back, this says, challenges. I expected times like this, but never thought they'd be so bad, so long, and so frequent. And lastly, give up. At some point, hanging in there just makes you look like an even bigger loser. But we really do have some good news in our industry that I want to make sure that you're all aware of as we look for the positive in the year that lies ahead. The media spin about our industry is about to improve in a big way, and it already has to some extent. The first 6 months of this year were really terrible for us from a news cycle standpoint, and that's because we were comparing every month, month after month, against the same month a year earlier. We were comparing tax credit incentivized months against no tax credit. And so it really set us up for month after month of demoralizing statistics. Well, once we got far enough into this year that we were no longer compared against tax credit months last year, it really should improve things quite a bit. So we may still have a long and tough road ahead of us in this market. I have no idea how long it's going to persist, but I can't imagine it's going to be any worse than the last 12 to 15 months was. And so even if things do stay painfully slow, the media is not going to be adding insult to injury by making every month of new statistics sound like a fresh new disaster because of the comparison against a year earlier. Some other highlights coming this year. I was a young man back when I started chairing the contract working group, and I now feel very old and haggard, but by golly, we're going to deploy a new residential sales contract this year, which has only been like 5 years in the making. So the contract has been finished up and is ready to go. The attorneys from the Real Estate Committee of the Champaign County Bar Association are going to be doing a video training session on this. So as soon as we can get Richard Joy and Joe Learman through hair and makeup and in front of the camera, we're going to have, Joe Learman's going to be in the hair department for a long time. We're going to have a great resource because every one of us, without having to worry if we can make it to a particular training session, every one of us will have access to the training video done by the attorneys who wrote the document themselves. But equally importantly, all of our new members coming in the future are going to have access to this same training resource. So they won't be given an abbreviated, sort of glossed over version of what's important on the contract at new member orientation. Everyone will have access to that training resource. So it is good that we're going to do it right, even though we've waited a long time for it. We're going to have the addition of residential rentals as a new property class to the MLS. That's been in the works for the last year or two. This will enable us to search residential rentals available just like we do for other property classes, and it will also facilitate offers of blanket cooperating compensation if we're wanting to compensate other members for placing tenants in rentals that we have listed. So watch for that the next few months. Our tech committee, kudos to them because they've worked very long and hard on trying to develop the framework for a new Champaign County Association of Realtors website. That's a project that is quite important. However, it does fall into the category of elective expenditures, and so they've done all of this work over a long period of time, and it's going to be temporarily backburnered until we find out what our budget numbers look like early next year. But that's a project that remains ongoing, and they're still continuing to work toward that. One of the upsides of the challenging economic environment is everyone's looking for ways to cut costs, and so consolidation is something that a lot of associations are talking about. Anything that allows us to take advantage of greater economies of scale is a great thing. And the best part for our association is if we enter into these sorts of exploratory talks, we're doing it from a position of strength. As you heard from Todd's presentation, we're very blessed that our financial picture is still very, very strong. So we're at least starting the initial process of due diligence to see if there are any opportunities for consolidation, either with other associations or following the model that other associations in the state have used, which is maybe consolidating an MLS but maintaining separate associations. So I have a few final thoughts. We need to continue learning to adapt to the challenges of a down market. The down market, sadly, is not new to us. We've been living through this for several years now. But the challenges and the adaptation is something that feels new almost every month. With realtors competing more intensely for smaller slices of a shrinking pie, what I'm finding is that we're seeing more elbows being thrown, and we feel like we're getting more elbows landed on us more often, and it's just a function of a lot of realtors competing for a smaller pool of business. The challenging times make it more important than ever to constantly reaffirm our commitment to the code of ethics, because we all want to survive this market, but surviving the real estate market is not going to be of as much value if either our individual or our collective reputations get damaged in the process. So my final analogy is going to be comparing our job to real estate as an endurance sport. So those of you who have known me for a few years may remember that I looked like this about 4 years ago. Oh no, wait a minute. That's how I looked 4 years ago. That is an actual picture of me. But anyway, this is what I looked like 4 years ago. No, A and I went on a weight loss program, and it was a weight loss program first and foremost, but it required exercise. So I started running as part of that program. I couldn't run a half a mile in August of 2008. But I started exercising and ran a full marathon in spring of 2009, the Illinois Marathon here. I have since done a total of 6 full marathons. We'll be doing a 7th next month. And so the marathon analogy, as we can find ourselves struggling through what seems like this interminably long, slow market, becomes more and more applicable. This is how a lot of us feel who have had to live through this for the last few years. If you've been in the business more than a few years, you remember the days when you could have a client just land in your lap. They would fall like manna from the heavens, and then you would sprint to closing, and then you'd get a quick paycheck, and the money's in the bank. We don't have those anymore. There are no quick sprint transactions. Every transaction in the current market demands a marathon level of endurance. People that run marathons commonly talk about the fact it's not the first 20 miles that are such a big deal, it's that last 6.2 that really gets you. Well, knowing that the last few miles is more difficult than the first 20 combined, that doesn't really make those last 6.2 a whole lot easier, but if you know it, you're at least prepared to push through it. And so I encourage you all to keep that in mind. The frustrating thing for us is we don't know exactly where the finish line is going to be for the challenging market. We just know that we want to survive it, and we've got to keep pushing ourselves through it. And so my concluding remarks, and you're going to see an actual picture of me, is to motivate you, pretend you're Matt Difanis and run like you're being chased by an angry schoolgirl. Thank you all so much. I'm very excited about the opportunity to serve the association, and I appreciate you all being here.